Princess Elizabeth has won a special place in the hearts of the people of this country and of the Dominion.
I declare before you all that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service and to the service of our great imperial family to which we all belong.
Hey friend, welcome to my channel karinealourde, where we deep dive and break down the most iconic stars in history. If you're not yet subscribed, please be sure to do so and turn your notifications on so you never miss an upload. Today we are doing Queen Elizabeth II. There has been a lot of mourning and sadness after the death of Queen Elizabeth II, but there has also been a great deal of celebration. Twitter was in shambles. I could not even log on Twitter for too long because, oh my goodness, it was insanity. But I also learned a lot, and it made me curious to know what exactly are the reasons for so many people, even a lot of Brits. A lot of people said it was Black Twitter and Irish Twitter, but there were even a lot of Brits I saw giving their commentary and a lot of journalists writing articles, and I was learning so much. But we will get into all of that in this video. I want to do something a little bit different with this video, with today's documentary, because oftentimes when we do these breakdowns and we start off with the biography of the person that we're breaking down and their childhood, the traumas and all the pain that they went through, it can make a lot of you guys sympathize with a person so much that by the time we get to the toxic things that they were involved in or the trauma they inflicted on others, a lot of people in the comments are so sympathetic that they disregard the trauma that these figures have inflicted on countless individuals. I'm not always too proud of that because I can be objective. I can understand someone's pain and trauma and what they've been through and the human aspect of it while still holding them accountable and not worshiping them. And in this channel, if I did that in the past, I apologize. This is not what this channel is about. This is definitely not who I am, especially now. I don't want to promote worshiping people that really have done a lot of cruel things in society. And I want to be blunt with who they really are. While yes, we still can talk about how they became who they are and have some empathy and understanding, it's not meant to worship any royal figure, any celebrity, or any political figures. Okay, so I want to start with Queen Elizabeth, some of the problematic things, as we stated, that cause nations all over to really despise the royal family and despise her. Though we know and the British Empire love their queen, okay? We know that you cannot say anything bad about them. They're really super strong in the comments. I want you guys to put that aside and really try to understand why everyone else might have a problem with it. And aside from the fairy tale and all the pomp and circumstances, really try to understand what the average person or the average Caribbean, the average African nation endured under the British thumb, which is cruel and very inhumane, unbiblical, and just soulless. And so there's no empathy in that regard. I do want to start with that. But I can only go so deep down the rabbit hole because we know how YouTube is as of now. And y'all know y'all saw my Oprah video disappear. I don't want to accuse anybody, and I'm just going to say allegedly, but it came from allegedly her camp, okay? So a lot of these people do watch these videos when I do it on them, and they're not always too happy, if you catch my drift. And behind the scenes, it's a lot of battle and fight, but hey, it is what it is, okay? I'm going to leave a lot for your imagination and just kind of steer you to go down the rabbit hole yourself. So read between the lines with this video, and that's all I can say with it because there's a lot of information I'm just gonna try to keep safe and not say. But I want to first start with her religion. Many people don't know this, and a lot of people from the British Empire, citizens who believe that the Queen is Christian. The Queen is God-fearing. She loves Christ. And that's who she is, Queen. And no, she's not involved in any of that stuff. Well, that is a lie, okay? In August 1946, then Princess Elizabeth was initiated into the mystic circle of Welsh bards. This was at Mountain Ash, Glamorgan, Elizabeth was dressed as a druid for the ceremony, which initiated her as an honorary bard. And we know that the whole family has been involved in secret societies where they have the symbols of, like, the Knights Templar. If you guys are not familiar with what those are, I can only go so far, like I stated. So, do some research of your own with who the Knights Templars were, the whole plan towards the end that's coming. That's coming towards the end. Their plan for the world, for the future of what's coming. But let me show you guys clips of this druid ceremony.
On August 6, 1946, Queen Elizabeth II, who was still Princess Elizabeth at the time, was initiated into the Druidic organization called the Gorsedd of the Bards of Wales during the National Eisteddfod at Mountain Ash, Glamorgan, Wales. The ceremony was led by Archdruid Cruice Williams. The Gorsedd of the Bards began as part of the revival of Druidic traditions in the 18th century. The word Druid can be traced back to the Proto-Indo-European root words deru, meaning tree or oak, and wid, meaning to know. Hence, it can be interpreted as literally meaning they who know the oak. A Druid was a member of the high-ranking priestly class of ancient Celtic cultures. They are known to have served as advisors to Celtic kings and chieftains, holding significant influence in pre-Christian Britain. They were religious leaders, legal authorities, lore keepers, and even medical professionals. Because they left no written records, most of the information we have about them comes from accounts by other cultures like the Romans and Greeks, where they were referred to as philosophers and men learned in religious affairs. The oldest known reference to the Druids dates to the 4th century BC, but the oldest detailed account is from Julius Caesar in the 1st century BC. Cicero wrote that they had knowledge of what the Greeks called physiologia, and that they could make predictions about the future. Diodorus Siculus wrote that they could predict the future by observing the flight and call of birds, or by making either animal or human sacrifices. Notably, however, many historians have asserted that claims about human sacrifice were nothing more than Roman propaganda intended to justify their own cultural superiority. After the Roman invasion of Gaul, the Druids were essentially wiped out, and by the 2nd century their knowledge and culture were suppressed to the point of disappearing entirely from any written record. Neo-Druidism began in the 18th century as part of a broader revival of interest in ancient Celtic traditions and spirituality. Since then, numerous other organizations have been established that still exist today. One of their symbols is called the Awen, although there is debate about its authenticity. It represents the triple aspect of the deity, as well as the triad of the sunrises at the equinoxes and solstices. In Welsh mythology, the Awen is the source of inspiration for poets and bards. Neo-Druids have defined Awen as flowing energy or life force. The Order of Bards, Ovatis, and Druids is a modern example of Neo-Druidism founded in the 1960s in England. Their teachings emphasize the sanctity of nature and belief in the other world. Many members identify as pagan, though the organization is inclusive of various spiritual paths, often drawing from the 4 pre-Christian Celtic nations' deities and related beliefs, such as ancestral worship, polytheism, spiritualism, and even atheism. Although she was stripped of her title of Honorary Ovate of the Bards of Wales in 2006 due to her not speaking the Welsh language, Queen Elizabeth's induction into the order can be seen as a modern echo of those ancient connections between Druidic figures and royalty. Isn't it fascinating that a culture which was almost erased from history could not only resurface, but also rise to a level of influence comparable to the days when they sat as advisors at the top of the power echelon?
Western civilization is based on the white man's culture, and the white man's culture comes from Europe. For 1,000 years before the Roman Empire ever existed, and it still exists today in Europe, was a whole system of government, religion, law, etc. was already established before Rome ever came about. Was called the Druid system. Druids, well, they were the lawyers, the attorneys, they were the judges, the religious leaders, they were everything. The doctors, the medical, everything was Druid. in Europe. One of the most important symbols in the Druid religion was a magic wand, like the conductor of an orchestra. He waves his magic wand, and you had better dance to the tune because he's the boss. So the magic wand, like Merlin the magician, magic wands were always made out of the wood of a holly tree. It's made out of Hollywood. So once you understand it's the magic of Hollywood that's orchestrating the whole world to dance to a new tune.
Wow. So where does that leave us?
It leaves you in a world of trouble. If you are ignorant, ill-informed, and unread, you need to open your mind and discover for the first time that law, courts, education, it's all part of a system. You need to begin to open your mind, understand how the world really works.
The Druids were definitely the great artists of the world. The Druid system is alive today. And back then, they didn't name it Luciferian or Illuminati or all those terms or whatever. But that's what essentially it is. It is a society that is in secret, that a lot of the most prolific people that we know are part of. And they basically control the systems of the world. And you'll see royals in there. You'll see the wealthiest people in there, and they make basically the decisions for all of us. These are not conspiracies. We have to grow up and mature at some point and stop believing everything is a conspiracy when the truth is laid out in front of you. But I do understand the people that want to live in blindness, and there'll be a lot of them in the comments. Understand a lot of them too are bots, okay? So don't argue with people too much. But nonetheless, her whole family was a part of that, which is very unfortunate. Many of you guys say, but the queen, especially during her Christmas specials, always mention Jesus Christ as the savior, and she went to church every Sunday as part of royalty, Korean. So how could you be a part of that?
Happy Christmas.
She held the title Defender of the Faith, and every Christmas, Queen Elizabeth II shared her faith with the nation.
I hope that 1958 may bring you God's blessing and all the things you long for.
Me, the teachings of Christ and my own personal accountability before God provide a framework in which I try to lead my life.
In 1953, Queen Elizabeth II was crowned during a coronation ceremony, a solemn religious ceremony, where Elizabeth was anointed and blessed by the Archbishop of the Church of England.
For me, the life of Jesus Christ, the Prince of Peace, whose birth we celebrate today, is an inspiration and an anchor in my life.
Well, yeah, that is a valid question that you guys pose, because one thing is you have to understand what syncretism is. And I am going to do a deeper video on syncretism on my Mental Gems channel. If you're not subscribed there, subscribe there. Hopefully that video will be out by Sunday, no later than Monday, God willing. But syncretism, for you to understand what syncretism is throughout centuries, histories, even the old biblical Israel dealt with syncretism, and God was never pleased about it. It's the mixing of what is godly with what is profane. So it's the mixing of Christianity was not even a term really back then. It was known as the way per the Bible. Many verses in the Bible will let you know that it was called the way. Syncretism was something that was there since the worship of Yahweh, since the worship of Elohim, where he constantly was upset with Israel because Israel kept trying to mix the pagan practices of the other nations with the worship of Yahweh. And Yahweh does not allow that. I'm very shocked. There's a lot of people I even follow, would even say I'm friends with, that I come to find out they really think it's perfectly fine to mix pagan worship and idolatry and all of the mystical and stuff with the worship of Yahweh. They find nothing wrong with that. When, if you ever cracked your Bible for 1 minute, you would see that God was always against the mixing of the two. He just was never okay with that, right?
Syncretism has always been a problem for the people of God. We see that in the Old Testament, where Israel assimilated some of the practices of their pagan neighbors into their own worship of God. After the northern tribes split from the southern tribes, after the time of Rehoboam, Jeroboam, the king of Israel, instituted the worship of God in Dan and Bethel, but in that worship he employed the use of golden calves, which came from the religions of the nations surrounding them. In the New Testament, we see syncretism as a problem as well, that the different philosophies of the culture around them influence the church. Syncretism continues to be a challenge for the church today. We are so tempted to imbibe the views of our culture and to join them in our understanding of the worship of God. The Apostle Paul warns us in Romans 12 that we ought not to be conformed to this world. and then encourages us to be transformed by the renewal of our minds, to look at our culture in light of the Word of God, and to bring the false teachings of our culture to the light of the truth of God.
The royal family, of course, has done that. And syncretism is still part of society today. How it is evidenced is in traditions like Christmas, traditions like Easter. Again, I encourage you guys, before you in the comments arguing everything down, go a little deeper down the rabbit hole. In my video on Monday on my mental gems, I will go down the rabbit hole a little bit deeper. I'm a little bit more free on that channel because it's sponsored by my viewers who really support behind the scenes. So even if they demonetize, it's okay if I have issues. But this one, I'm a little bit more strict. But a lot of these pagan holidays that is worshipped is part of the syncretism. Even the day of worship, going on Sunday to worship the sun god, the names of the month, the names of the day, Thursday, Thor's day, the god Thor, and a lot of those are mixed in with African deities as well. Just same deities, different names, etc. So a lot of it is mixed. And the biggest symbol or way you can recognize syncretism is in the name of Yeshua, who people will call Jesus, right? That was not his name. And that was not the name to be saved at. You will always see these people, Luciferians, demon worshippers, celebrities that really are not Christian for real. Yeah, they gladly will say the name of Jesus. Even demons will say it because that's not even Yeshua's name. That's not even his name, right? It was always Yeshua. You will never see them say the real name. It's historical. It's a real thing. Go look at Hellenization as well. We will dissect that on Monday's video because syncretism and Hellenization go hand in hand. And this is what you mean by the worship of Yahweh being whitewashed or taken by royal families or by these rulers, kings and queens, and then them incorporating their own gods and holidays into it. So this is why you can see the queen has no issue with mixing, or saying the name Jesus, going to church or whatever. They're not worshiping the Jesus you think you're praying to.
Each king had his druid, but Christianity, they were incompatible with Christianity and they disappeared as a group. The order, however, continued to survive by adapting itself to Christianity and becoming part of the Christian organization, but keeping its traditions, keeping its beliefs, and acting inside Christianity, the Christian matrix. And that wasn't simply in Ireland, but all over Europe. And we find then MacLuger not only adopting Christianity, but becoming the ancestor, as the genealogy shows, the ancestor of most of the early Christian saints in Ireland, and the ancestor of the royal houses.
And a season for every activity under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die.
At the Logan Stone, the Archdruid, taking her hands in his, pronounced the bardic welcome.
Elizabeth of Windsor.
Her Royal Highness was then conducted by the recorder to her place between her sponsors, one of whom, as his coon tenant, dressed the hood. Later in the pavilion, the princess addressed druid, bards, and ovates, concluding in Welsh, "On with the Eisteddfod flood, and every blessing to weigh."
And if you don't know, God doesn't fault you for what you don't know. And this, one of the several times on this channel, I'll actually speak a little faith-based because a lot, we don't know. We don't know. Our people perish for the lack of knowledge, right? There was a lot I didn't know. But being into history, being a history buff, there's a lot I'm learning. And there's a lot people just don't know because a lot of people really falsely believe, even by books that were put out there, Christianity is false because this, that, but they don't know the history of how this all came to be. The second scandal we want to talk about is Prince Andrew and the whole Epstein situation. And what's upsetting about this situation is how the royal courts, the queen, really went out of her way to block the media from exposing their ties with the Epsteins, okay? Or their ties with this type of degenerate lifestyle. And there's a lot, again, I'll show what is permissible, but there's a lot of clips you guys will just have to go find on your own, where there's a lot of reporters that speak about just the harassment they received from the royal house, the royal family. People went missing. People came up dead for just trying to speak. And if it wasn't for the public just overly exposing everything, a lot people would have been dead. But it's like when everyone's talking about the same thing, there's power in knowledge. There's power in everyone talking about the same thing. Like, it would be easier to expose all of this stuff about the queen or the royal family if every other creator, you know, was talking about similar things and exposing those things. You can't get rid of us all. You would just have to change censorship laws, which is what YouTube has been trying to do. But once something becomes common knowledge and everyone's talking about it, there's power in those numbers. And that's how the whole Epstein situation came to be, because the royal family was definitely behind trying to silence all those things out, to even the point where they named the victim, which is cruel because they named the victim. And the victim was trying to remain anonymous. And we know when powerful people name a victim, what are they trying to do? They're trying to open you up to that kind of harassment, which is just cruel.
Buckingham Palace has stepped up its denials that Prince Andrew had an underage girl. It's gone as far as to name the alleged victim, according to Britain's Sunday papers. Jeffrey Epstein forced the girl, ID'd by the palace as Virginia Roberts, to have sex with the Duke of York in New York and London.
Epstein instructed Jane Doe No. 3 that she was to give the prince whatever he demanded, and required Jane Doe No. 3 to report back to him on the details of the sex,
as well as on a private Caribbean island that was part of an orgy with other girls.
At the Queen's log cabin on her Balmoral estate, the couple are said to have been there at the invitation of Prince Andrew, just highlighting how close their relationship with the royal was.
I've had the story for 3 years. I've had this interview with Virginia Roberts. We would not put it on the air. First of all, I was told, who's Jeffrey Epstein? No one knows who that is. This is a stupid story. Then the palace found out that we had her whole allegations about Prince Andrew and threatened us in a million different ways. We were so afraid we wouldn't be able to interview Kate and Will that also quashed the story. And then Alan Dershowitz was also implicated in it because of the planes. She told me everything. She had pictures. She had everything. She was in hiding for 12 years. We convinced her to come out. We convinced her to talk to us. It was unbelievable what we had. Clinton, we had everything. I tried for 3 years to get it on, to no avail, and now it's all coming out, and it's like these new revelations, and I freaking had all of it. I'm so pissed right now. Like, every day I get more and more pissed because I'm just like, oh my God, it was what we had was unreal. Other women backing it up. Hey. Yeah.
Now, the other thing that really pissed off everybody and really is the cruelest, and I can only go so far, is the stolen wealth of the British Empire, the royal family, right? The stolen diamonds, stolen gold, and especially them stripping Africa, stripping the Caribbean of all their wealth, and even a lot of what is happening in my native country of Haiti. Yeah, the British Empire, the French, very much behind that. It's just terrible.
The Windsors, really the German Saxe-Coburg-Gotha family, have enough money to single-handedly feed the world's poor. No one truly knows what they are worth because the private wealth of the royal family is kept a secret. But the truth is, the Queen and her heirs are worth trillions, having accumulated the wealth of their black nobility ancestors in land, homes, and other treasures. They have more than 300 residences. That's right, 300, including palaces, castles, and stately mansions. The Queen could sleep in a different luxury estate almost every night of the year. And still, taxpayers foot the bill for their luxury lifestyle.
It's terribly hard to work out just how rich the Queen is. The goods, chattels, which are very valuable ones, that she is custodian of for her life.
The Queen is custodian of many royal treasures. Her wealth is incalculable. She has in her possession a royal collection worth more than £10 billion.
The stamp collection of Buckingham Palace is worth millions. all the china, and she's got so many different sets of dinner sets and 450 set pieces of every item. She's most likely got 20 of those. Meissen, porcelain, all the great ones of the world. Her art collection is just astonishing. There are so many Van Dycks around, there are Michelangelos. I mean, absolutely endless goodies. Obviously, this is an immensely rich woman.
Among the Queen's myriad of less well-known duties is her stewardship of the Duchy of Lancaster, her huge landholding which makes a substantial contribution to the monarchy's finances. As its landlady, the Queen pays the Duchy regular visits. Her tenants turn out delighted to see their Queen at close quarters.
Receptions on the royal yacht. Drinks are very lavish indeed. And of course, this loosens people's tongues, and she loves that.
How much of the royal family's wealth comes from slavery? As the world remembers Queen Elizabeth II's reign, many are finding it hard to overlook how the monarchy's global power stems from the slave trade.
The Crown's wealth is estimated at $28 billion. That includes Buckingham Palace, the Crown Jewels, huge areas of land across the UK, and some prime London real estate.
But exactly how much of this money hails from the slave trade? The 1562 journey of John Hawkins, the first English person known to have included enslaved Africans in his cargo, was signed off by Queen Elizabeth I. After Britain invaded Jamaica in 1655, the Royal African Company was set up under royal charter by Charles II to manage the West African slave trade. The Royal African Company went on to ship more African people to the Americas than any other single institution ever. Kensington Palace, Hampton Court Palace, and all the other palaces dating back to the 17th century were, to some extent, funded by the slave trade. Before Prince William and Kate landed in Jamaica earlier this year, more than 100 public figures signed an open letter calling on the British government and the royal family to apologize and pay out. It's complex to calculate, but various estimated figures are staggering. Suggesting Britain owes $9.7 trillion to Caribbean countries, $11.9 trillion to African countries, and $44.6 trillion to India. So while it's hard to tell just how much of the royal family's wealth comes from slavery, it quite literally built the roofs over their heads.
Queen Elizabeth visited Sierra Leone in 1961 and took all our diamonds away.
Precious stones, as they are washed from the soil, now shown to the Queen, are, of course, considerably less precious than they will be when cut as either gems or industrial diamonds. Elaborate machinery is quite unnecessary for many of the processes. The world outside is hungry for all the diamonds the country can produce. And as Sierra Leone is by no means a rich nation, the government is determined to develop every possible asset.
So a lot of people are not happy about that because, they make it a way where these little countries or these other nations cannot really fight back. They cannot really fight back. It's like you just got to sit there and watch all your wealth be taken while your people starve. A lot of nations right now are starving and can't progress in our third world countries just so the British Empire could thrive. And I don't know how the citizens are okay with that, right? The citizens know these things, that they still honor their queen, and they don't care because as long as their kids eat, let thousands else die. But it's supposed to be a Christian nation and a Bible-following nation that profess the name of Jesus, but you're okay with having a royal family strip nations, billions of people at this point, just starving for a royal family that even for you, your own people are struggling, and you still uphold the monarchy. I can never understand it, but nonetheless, okay? And least but not least, which is the Commonwealth. When will that be done away with? When will people just decide enough is enough? Because why? Why is this monopolizing different islands in different countries acceptable? Can you guys understand why people are upset?
When Elizabeth came to the throne, Britain still had an empire and her face was on stamps around the world.
the African countries like Nigeria and the Gold Coast were all still part of the empire and issuing stamps with the Queen's head on.
I think when people look back and say, well, what did this woman actually achieve? She did keep the Commonwealth alive. She changed the old British Empire into something new and dynamic.
Elizabeth is queen of 15 countries. Her Commonwealth is very dear to her.
She considers her role as Queen of Australia, New Zealand, Canada, any of the other 16 Dominion countries, Queen of Britain, UK, Northern Ireland, Wales, all that. She loves her prime ministers.
The Commonwealth love her. They think that she's the person who cares about them. So she's been around so long that she's such friends with all these leaders. They really feel that she genuinely cares, and she does.
80% of the world's blind population are living in developing countries, and many of those countries are Commonwealth countries.
Prince Harry, of course, visited 7 Commonwealth countries of the Caribbean in November last year, representing the Queen, his grandmother.
The Queen has sent me here as a carrier pigeon to deliver a message to you from her, to the government and the people of Barbados on the occasion of your 50th anniversary of independence.
Right now, the prince is on day 11 of his 2-week tour of the Caribbean, and it's a big one.
So with all that being said, this is why our queen was not mourned amongst many nations and people. The Indians, the Caribbeans, okay? The African nations all rejoiced and danced and celebrate. Because when wicked dies, as the Bible says, people rejoice when a wicked leader dies. That's from the Bible, right? So though she had a very prim and proper, and people were like, oh, she didn't have much power. I mean, one thing I found interesting is that she'd wear gloves often. You always see the queen with a glove because she didn't like to shake the hands of common people. And by these common people, I'm talking about political figures she considered common. She did indeed have a lot of power. People are like, what kind of power she had? She had a lot of power, guys, and accomplished a lot in her time and did have a say-so. But they will have you believe that she didn't, so you can uphold the royal family. They will have you believe that whoever is in the seat has no power. They will report that and tell you that you're lying, right? Even about her being a druid, there's a lot of websites like PolitiFact where people are telling you what it is, and they're like, that's not true. It was a cultural thing. It's not a secret society. It's not. And these are websites that are government-based, like all propaganda. This is why I say read a book, because even AI now, if they summarize these things, they'll tell you something. Like you ask AI, I challenge you guys to go on your phone right now and put Queen Elizabeth II Druid ceremony and read the response of the AI overview that Google gives you. On Google, it will tell you that it was a cultural ceremony, not tied to pagan ties, not this, not that. And then you're like, wow. So unless you're reading the books for yourself and getting the information, this age of technology can really brainwash you. And it's all propaganda to make you believe that the villains are the heroes and the heroes are the villains, okay? But with all that said, let's get into her biography and attempt to enjoy it. Before we get into that, we're going to talk about her public persona in the media. Queen Elizabeth was portrayed as a beautiful fairy tale queen in the 1950s when she was a young woman and just beginning her career. She was stunning as a young lady also. As she collected more functional clothes, she developed a distinct signature style. Instead of following the latest trends, she dressed for the occasion to stand out in the crowd. She started donning brightly colored overcoats and hats whenever she went out. 5 dressers, a seamstress, and dressmaker worked on her wardrobes. Elizabeth did not often participate in interviews, so not much was known about her inner life. Not only is it considered impolite to inquire about or reveal the monarch's political beliefs, but she has avoided making any overt statements about her own views in public. Nonetheless, the 1980s saw a heightening of public criticism of the royal family as the public became more aware to the private lives of Elizabeth's children. Her fame reached an all-time low in the 90s. After intense scrutiny, she finally started paying income tax and made Buckingham Palace open to the public. Criticism centered on the monarchy's institution and the behavior of Queen's extended family instead of her own behavior and actions. So it's not really her that was getting criticism. But those pesky royal children, right? Dissatisfaction with the monarchy peaked with the death of Diana. Though Elizabeth's personal popularity, as well as general support for the monarchy, did have a rebound after her live television broadcast to the world 5 days after Diana's death. We're going to get into the controversy of that too, why a lot of people don't like her because of Diana. But first, let's get into a little lighthearted fun. Let's talk about her diet. She lived so long, so we are definitely interested in her diet and life habits. Maybe we can take some notes, okay? The Queen has been known to have the same jam penny, which is a sandwich for lunch and dinner, for as long as she can remember. And she starts each day with Earl Grey tea and a bowl of Special K cereal before moving on to more complex meals like grilled chicken or fish, plus a gin cocktail or the occasional chocolate. So she was a heavy drinker. Every once in a while, though, for breakfast, the Queen did indulge in some scrambled eggs and smoked salmon with grated truffle. And when she dines on her own, she is very disciplined. No starch is the rule, no potatoes, rice, or pasta for dinner. Just usually something like grilled sole with vegetables and salad. Another former palace chef, John Higgins, told the National Post that mangoes were one of the Queen's favorite fruit. The Queen really enjoyed mangoes. She could tell you how many mangoes were in the fridge at Buckingham Palace. She drank a glass of champagne every night before bed, and her favorite color was blue. Now, let's jump into her childhood. So, Queen Elizabeth II was born Princess Elizabeth Alexandra Mary on April 21st, 1926 in London to Prince Albert, Duke of York, later known as King George VI, and Elizabeth Bowes Leon.
April the 21st, 1926, joy bells rang throughout the empire. The royal union was blessed. Princess Elizabeth was born.
Growing up during the war years, Princess Elizabeth and her sister Margaret were educated at home. The young princesses were the apple of their parents' lives, particularly Margaret.
When Elizabeth was born, few predicted she would one day rule Britain as its monarch. Elizabeth, also known as Lilibet, was able to enjoy the first decades of her life as a royal without the burden of being the sole heir. Princess Margaret, who is stunning also, and she is on my list before you guys ask, was Elizabeth's only sibling, and she entered the world in 1930. They had a governess, which was like a teacher/nanny, named Marion Crawford, who helped their mother with the two princesses' education at home. Subjects such as music, literature, and history were emphasized in the classroom. The royal family was not pleased with Crawford's 1950 book of the Little Princesses. It was a biography of Elizabeth and Margaret's childhood. Elizabeth's orderliness, responsibility, and fondness for horses and dogs are all highlighted in the book. Those sentiments were shared by many, including Winston Churchill, who said that about Elizabeth when she was just 2 years old. He said, "Somehow, with a distinct personality or attitude, a stereotype, she exudes wisdom and self-reflection beyond her years, which is remarkable for a baby," end quote. A jolly little girl, but fundamentally sensible and well-behaved, was how her cousin Margaret Rhodes described her. Elizabeth was third in line to the British throne during her grandfather's reign, and after her uncle Edward and her father. Although her birth sparked public interest, Elizabeth was not expected to become queen because Edward was still young and likely to marry and have children of his own, who would come before Elizabeth in the line of succession. It was Elizabeth's uncle, King Edward VIII, who succeeded his father, George V, but Edward loved American divorcee Wallis Simpson. She was an interesting character, as there's many photos of her with Hitler. So I don't know. Edward had to choose between his love of Wallis, whether to follow his heart or his country. So Edward eventually made his decision and relinquished the throne in favor of Simpson. As a result of this unexpected turn of events, she is now considered the natural successor to the British throne, which is Elizabeth. In 1937, he was crowned King George VI. He had adopted the name George to maintain a line of succession from his father. And in 1952, after King George VI's death, Elizabeth's mother became Queen Elizabeth, and then Elizabeth II succeeded her as monarch upon her death.
In a way, I didn't have an apprenticeship. My father died much too young. It was all a very sudden kind of taking on and making the best job you can. It's a question of maturing into something that one's got used to doing and accepting the fact that it's your fate.
So if her parents had had a son, he would have been natural successor and would have come before her in the line of succession, which was determined at the time by hereditary rule. Elizabeth joined the Auxiliary Territorial Service to do her part for the war effort in 1945. She learned to be a skilled driver and mechanic alongside other British women. Though her time as a volunteer was brief, it gave Elizabeth a window into the lives of those outside the royal family. When she and Margaret were given the opportunity to celebrate Victory in Europe Day as ordinary citizens without being recognized, it was another one of her most memorable non-royal experiences. Now let's talk about her marriage with Prince Philip, which is an interesting character. So Elizabeth married her distant cousin Philip Mountbatten on November 20th, 1947 at London's Westminster Abbey. Young Elizabeth was just 13 when she first met Philip, and he was, guess what? 18. The Greek prince who would become her husband, she had instant feelings for him. As the years passed, the two remained in contact and eventually began dating. How do you remain in contact? You're 18 and you remain in contact with a 13-year-old. That's questionable too, but I'll let you guys discuss that in the comments.
The royal family and Princess Elizabeth's fiancé have permitted these special film studies to be made in response to the rapidly mounting worldwide interest in the forthcoming royal wedding on the 20th of November in Westminster Abbey.
Met Philip Mountbatten when she was just 13 years old on a visit to Dartmouth Naval College. His uncle, Lord Mountbatten, encouraged the match. Their wedding later that year lifted the post-war gloom of austerity.
And how they cheered the happy pair when they came out onto the balcony.
Wedding dress made of ivory satin was designed by royal dressmaker Norman Hartnell.
It was the first joyful royal event there'd been since the war. It was a very, very depressing time, and Churchill described the wedding as a bright ray of colour on the hard grey road we have to travel. And Britain had been through very difficult times of poverty, of people without homes after all the bombing of the cities.
Queen was 13 when she first saw Prince Philip, who was then a young naval cadet at Dartmouth.
The young bride had met her husband 8 years earlier. At their first meeting, the teenage Princess Elizabeth confided in a friend that she never took her eyes off Philip. In November 1948, 6 days before her first wedding anniversary, Prince Charles was born at Buckingham Palace. Princess Anne was born 2 years later in 1950. At her christening, the young Charles shared his parents' enthusiasm for the new addition to the royal family. Official duties meant long absences away from home for the young queen. On one occasion, her son hardly recognized his mother.
Queen felt particularly in her marriage, it should be a traditional marriage of her time. Husband called the shots and the women ran the house. And this dominant male, macho man, the Duke of Edinburgh, had to take second place in public anyway. She had to compensate, felt that she had to compensate for the fact that she was, in essence, the boss.
In February 1960, Prince Andrew was born, almost 10 years after Princess Anne.
They were quite a mismatched pair because while Philip was a loud and extroverted talker, Elizabeth was more reserved and quiet, a shy woman. Although British authorities had connections to the Danish and Greek royal families, King George VI, Elizabeth's father, was hesitant to approve of the marriage because of rumors that he was a tyrant and that the fact that Philip also was not wealthy. He didn't have much money. Although her mother and Prime Minister Winston Churchill strongly supported changing the family's surname to Windsor, the decision was met with resistance from the Queen's husband, who wanted the Queen to take on his last name. So it was kind of like a blow to him that he basically had to take on her last name. That could have been a blow to his ego. I don't know. In 1960, she mandated that her non-royal descendants use the surname Mountbatten-Windsor for official purposes, such as marriage. So Philip's impulsive, controversial comments and rumors of possible infidelity caused countless public relation nightmares over the years, and we're going to get into that. But Elizabeth and Philip didn't wait around to start a family. Their firstborn son, Charles, was born the year after they tied the knot. By crowning Charles Prince of Wales in 1969, she effectively anointed him to succeed her. On television, hundreds of millions of people watched the event. Now let's get into Prince Philip's affairs. A musical comedy superstar, Pat Kirkwood, earned more than any other actress in London at the time. While Elizabeth was at home in her 8th month of pregnancy with Charles, Philip and Pat went out to eat in London publicly. might I add, and then danced until dawn at nightclub. They supposedly exchanged letters and met 6 more times, allegedly. Pat's career was derailed by the rumors that she was the prince's mistress. The protocol of the royal palace meant that they would not issue a statement responding to the rumors, leaving Pat to defend herself on her own. I would have had a happier and easier life if Prince Philip, instead of coming uninvited to my dressing room, had gone home to his pregnant wife on the night in question, end quote. Helen Corbet, a Greek cabaret star and lifelong friend of Philip, was also rumored to be the prince's lover. She had 2 children, Max and Louise, while separated from her husband, and she concealed their paternity. They had Prince Philip as their godfather, and he helped pay for the son, Max, tuition, so many people assumed and speculated that her children were his biological kids. Helen denied the affair, and Max, the son, publicly addressed the rumors that Philip was his father in 1996, saying that, "No, he is not my father," but never stated who was. TV host Katie Boyle, actress Merle Oberon, actress Anna Massey, and author Daphne du Maurier are all alleged exes of Philip. It was known that Philip would go on these long trips away from her, and they wouldn't even hear each other, and it'd be like a bachelor getaway. Philip did pass away on April 9, 2021 at age 99, so he lived a pretty long life too. Now let's talk about her coronation. So Queen Elizabeth II was crowned on June 2nd, 1953 at the age of 25 at Westminster Abbey. When her father, King George VI, passed away on February 6, 1952, Elizabeth became monarch. For the first time, the glamour and series of events of the coronation ceremony was seen by people all over the world thanks to television broadcasts of the event. There was still a sizable British Empire, dominion, and dependency when Elizabeth became monarch. Many of these colonies, however, gained their independence in the 1950s and 1960s, and the British Empire eventually morphed into the Commonwealth of Nations. So, as head of the Commonwealth and representative of Britain, Elizabeth II traveled abroad, including a historic visit to Germany in 1965. When she arrived, she made history as the first British monarch to visit the country in over 50 years. What does this mean? Let's break down. Did she actually have power? I saw a lot of people on Twitter asking that, and here are the 6 powers that I found interesting. Number 1, she can legitimize laws. While Parliament has the authority to pass laws, the Queen's approval is required for any legislation to take effect, right? Number 2, she appoints ministers to the crown, like prime ministers. Most government officials in the United Kingdom are chosen through a vote, but the Queen can appoint ministers to the crown, including advisors and cabinet officials herself. So in a sense, it's kind of like she's ruling through them, if that makes sense. Number 3, she can pardon criminals, much like American presidents. And number 4, command the armed forces. The Queen was in fact in charge of the entire British Armed Forces. Before joining the British Armed Forces, every potential recruit must take an oath to her. But with commanding any army comes the authority to delegate tasks within the military. Also, 5th, she can declare war. The Queen is the only person in the United Kingdom with the authority to declare war on other countries. But that doesn't mean she's invincible by any stretch of the imagination. This power is reserved for all-out warfare, and it requires the approval of Parliament, the Prime Minister, and the rest of the government. And of course, she has never declared war or anything like that, okay? And 6, she can avoid getting arrested. Although the public's perception and the stability of the monarchy may be affected by the Queen's actions, she is not in danger of being imprisoned or going to jail for them. She can't be tried as a result of her sovereign immunity. Elizabeth made tremendous efforts to preserve the monarchy's reputation and secure its future. After being hit by a series of blows, including death threats against the royal family, the once venerable institution has managed to weather the storm. Elizabeth had a close call of her own in June 1981 at the Trooping the Color, a special military parade held in her honor on the occasion of her official birthday. A man in the crowd pulled a weapon, which is a pistol, and pointed it at her. He took aim and fired, but his pistol was empty. The following year, an intruder broke into the Buckingham Palace and confronted Elizabeth in her bedroom, bringing the previous year's close call to nothing. Reporters began making assumptions about the health of the royal marriage after learning that Prince Philip had been notably missing during this incident. And I wanted to know, how do you sneak into a queen's palace? How How does an intruder do that? Where's the royal security? I don't understand. Now, let's talk about Diana and the Queen. So Charles, then 32, married Diana Spencer, then 19, and the couple had 2 children. Later, rumors surfaced that Charles' family had pressured him into the marriage, and so massive crowds gathered in the streets of London to witness the nuptials, and millions more watched the event unfold on television. The public had a very positive view of the monarchy at that time, and in 1982 and 1984, Elizabeth's grandsons were born to Charles and Diana. Elizabeth is now widely regarded as a doting grandmother by both William and Harry, and Prince William had said that she was an enormous help to him and Kate Middleton as they planned their wedding in 2011. Elizabeth's son Charles and Diana's marriage made news for years, well before the couple revealed their separation in 1992 and then filed for divorce in 1996. After Diana died in a car crash in Paris on August 31st, 1997, the media focused closely on Elizabeth. Her former daughter-in-law was so well liked that she earned the title People's Princess and the Queen of Hearts. Elizabeth was harshly criticized for her lack of response after she remained silent for days as the country mourned Diana's death. It didn't help the Queen's popularity among the people when rumors spread that she had no intention of giving Diana a royal funeral. Elizabeth returned to London almost a week after Diana's death and made a public statement about the late princess. No secret that Elizabeth had initial reservations about Charles' romance with Camilla Parker Bowles, so it's not like she liked Camilla. I don't think anyone liked Camilla, okay? But after breaking up initially due to pressure from Charles' family, Charles and Camilla renewed their relationships during his marriage to Diana. So now let's get into why people dislike her. What's up with all the Twitter, right? The British monarchy is widely recognized as one of the world's most influential organizations. In most cases, the British royal family is singled out for criticism because of the widespread belief that their political system is authoritarian, extremely outdated and archaic, and oppressive. Critics of the royal family often argue that the family is to blame for the perpetuation of existing economic and social gaps. Those who openly oppose the royal media and the royal family, whether they be members of political parties or average citizens, did so because they saw the monarchy as a system based on oppression and inequality. The media's tendency to portray the British monarchy as a morality tale is a major contributor to this perception, as is its refusal to acknowledge how the public's adoration of the royal family contributes to the normalization of social inequality. Now, let's talk about the colonialism and imperialism, and this may get touchy. There were still 70 territories under British control when Elizabeth I, her mother, assumed the throne. After the Bengal famine was made worse by British indifference, India only gained its independence 5 years before. The colonization of Africa was the European race to seize control of Africa's lands, people, and resources as quickly as possible, dividing tribes and families, hunting animals to extinction, and stealing precious resources and art from African nations that they have yet to recover or be compensated for. Most of these territories are now ruled by the British. Some say Elizabeth had little to do with all of this because she was a young woman in her 20s and more of a political figurehead than a leader. In the first season of The Crown, she danced with the president of Ghana to ensure that the newly independent country would remain within the Commonwealth and not become a socialist or communist nation, proving that even as a figurehead, she was vital to portraying the image of England as a colonial power. Also, despite the fact that the term colony has been replaced by overseas territories, to glamorize it, British colonialism is far from a thing of the past. Barbados only gained its independence last year. And I remember that. And many Jamaicans were outraged by William and Kate's visit, leading to a letter demanding restitution for 300 years as a slave colony. So many people are saying the royal family media plays everyone for fools also. To see that many people here approve of the monarchy and their lifestyle, you need only pursue the other responses. The palace and the tabloids are to blame for this, the glamorization of the monarch, as they spread their royal propaganda. They read an idealized, glamorized portrayal of the royal family in the media, one that is neither accurate nor fair, but still believe it wholeheartedly. In fact, one response here calls those who don't back the royal family envious or ignorant. So if you don't back them, even in Britain, you're either jealous of all their wealth or you're just ignorant. So you almost cannot criticize them. And even the people, they kind of like taken over the people to where the people will attack anyone who basically have any critique of the monarchy. arguing that it's wrong to give anything less than unwavering support to the royals. I saw many British articles that claim that the royal family also bribed political figures throughout the centuries. They use exemptions from the Freedom of Information Act to lobby politicians secretly. They start chatting casually, become friends, invite them to tea, and keep in touch via phone calls and letters. In addition, they are required to remain politically neutral. And yeah, the royal family does this. The Pope, all of those, they do that. They have all the leaders of the world meet with them and stuff and kind of have that influence. That's been long known. But here's a little thing that kind of irritated me. Though they have a history of more Rossism, I can't say certain things on YouTube, but The Guardian reported on June 2nd that the Queen's courtiers banned colored immigrants or foreigners from serving in clerical roles in the royal household until at least the late 1960s, according to newly discovered documents that will reignite the debate over the British royal family and race. And this is from David Pegg and Robin Evans. A lot of these things are now in the light, and they're only going to continue to come in the light. I feel with her passing, more things will come in the light. A lot more things will come in the light. And I'm here for it. I'm sitting patiently watching like you guys, but comment below your thoughts. May she rest in peace. She got to see 13 presidents elected during her reign. She met with 14 presidents. She first met with Harry Truman in 1951 as a princess. She lived so long. She got to see so much, and wow, I can only aspire to live that long. How do you guys feel with Charles? That's my last question that I want to ask. How do you guys feel with Charles now, finally? He might live as long because their family lives long. They have a family that lives long, okay? And how do you guys feel with him finally? What irks me the most, I think, with the situation is that Camilla will finally be queen. That really upsets and grinds my gears. It should have been Diana, right? Ugh, it's so frustrating. But she finally got what she wanted. And may they have a great reign and peace be unto them. I love you guys so much. Thank you for tuning in. If you like the music you're listening to, the link is in the description. Like, comment, subscribe, and share. And check out my Princess Diana video. I love you guys so much. Thank you. Until next time.